This is where we'll pick up. So the economizing problem. And here's the idea. We've talked about this, especially last week, a lot. The idea here is resources are scarce. So remember, we are constantly faced with scarcity. So resources are scarce. Because resources are scarce, what's the natural next step after that? We're constantly faced with scarcity, so what does that mean?
We have to make choices.
Very good. Resources are scarce, so we have to make choices. Well, remember, whenever a choice is made, something is given up. Constantly faced with scarcity, we have to choose. Whenever a choice is made, something is given up. The cost of the next best alternative, what is that called again? Wow. People are very ready for this participation. It's called opportunity cost. Very good. Constantly faced with scarcity, we have to choose. Whenever we choose, something is given up. The cost of the next best alternative is called opportunity cost. This is the economizing problem in a nutshell. Now I keep saying resources are scarce. And it's because we don't have enough resources while we have to make choices. What I want to get into right now is, I want to dig into exactly what I mean when I say resources are scarce. What are these things that are scarce that's forcing us to make choices? We're going to look at them. So these resources that are scarce, we can summarize them in 4 categories. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the resource categories. So resources are scarce. What are these things that are scarce that's forcing us to make choices? We have 4 categories and we're going to look at all 4 of them. The first one is land. So the first one is land. Now land in econ is very specific. Oftentimes we want to think of land as property, but that's not really true. Land in econ is very specific. Land in econ refers specifically to this. All the natural resources. The land in econ is all natural resources. Think of it this way. We came here, we saw it, and we used it in the production process. That's land. Think of them as the gifts of nature. Came here, saw it, and used it in the production process. That's land in econ. Give me an example. Gifts of nature. Came here, saw it, and used it in the production process. You think of an example?
Fossil fuels, oil underneath the ground.
Absolutely, I agree. I'll call those mineral deposits. Yeah, so oil, let's put all of them here. Gold, silver, yada, yada, yada. Yeah? Lump them all together. Mineral deposits, I agree. Any other examples of land? Yes.
Plants, fruit trees.
Yes, I agree. I'll just put it all together and call it the forest. Yeah, I agree. Anything else?
Water.
What do you mean by water?
Like rivers and stuff.
Absolutely. So water resources. Lump them all together. Oceans, streams, rivers, yada, yada, yada. Anything else?
Animals, food.
What do you mean by animals?
Food supply. I mean, you need a food supply to survive.
So are the animals the food supply?
Yeah.
Hold that thought on the animals.
Well, in some cases.
Hold that thought on the animals.
Opportunities for shelter. You have resources to build shelter or to build things to keep you comfortable.
Can you give me an example?
You could use wood to build a house.
So like the forest?
Yeah.
Okay. So we could put that there with the forest. Anything else? Came here, saw it, and used it in the production process. Gifts of nature. Can you think of any other examples? Air. I agree. Yeah.
Sunlight.
Yeah, I agree. You get the idea. Gifts of nature. Came here, saw it, and used it in the production process. That's land. There are 4 resource categories. Resources are scarce. First one is land. Second one, you're very familiar with this one, is labor. So the second resource category is labor. And labor refers to the physical and mental talents used in the production process. So the physical and mental talents used in the production process, that's labor in econ. Oftentimes when we think of labor, we think of physical or manual labor. When people say labor, you think of people working in the field, so on and so forth. Labor in econ is very expansive. We include physical and mental talents. So for example, you come to Pierce to study accounting. You transfer to CSUN in their accounting program with a bachelor's. You finish that degree in accounting. You get hired by an accounting firm. Chances are, being an accountant, whatever that process entails, is not really physical labor, but you are going to be exerting quite a bit of mental talent to get that job done. We consider that to also be labor in econ, so physical and mental. We capture both when we're looking at scarce resources under the category of labor. There are 4 resource categories: land, gifts of nature, labor, the physical and mental talents used in the production process, and here's the third one, it's capital. We have land, labor, and then we have capital. Oftentimes when you think of capital as money. I want you to scratch that from your mind. Capital in econ is not money. In fact, econ does not consider money to be a productive resource per se. It helps to facilitate production and output, acts as a unit of account and a medium of exchange, but money within itself is not considered a productive resource. We don't consider it that way. And capital, the lay definition of capital, you know, like you have a friend who comes to you and says, I have some t-shirts and I'm going to print a phrase on it. I just need $5,000 capital and we'll be rich. Don't do that, by the way. Right? That's not capital in econ. Capital in econ is very specific. Capital in econ is this. It refers to the tools, machines, buildings, property, equipment, and other constructions used in the production process. So capital is very specific. You're going to have to clear the lay definition of capital when you're thinking about capital in econ. And if you're having a hard time following, this is what I normally use to help me remember. When you think of capital in econ, think of capital equipment. That's how we view capital in econ. It's not money. We're dealing specifically with the tools, machine, buildings, factories, and that property example that you gave me earlier for land, property is considered capital. This is a very big deal in econ because capital to us, this type of capital, this is what we consider investment. Anything that leads to the expansion of the productive capacity of society, that's investment for us. So when you build something, you make something, you have a factory, that to us is real investment. The stock market is not investment to an economist. The stock market is just a transfer of pieces of paper to an economist. I'm not saying it's not important, but investment for us is this. When you do something that leads to expansions in the productive capacity of society, that's investment, not the stock market. Capital, tools, machine, building, equipment, that's capital. So be very careful with this one. Your lay definition, remove the money concept for capital here, and if you get to the point where you're struggling a little, think of capital as capital equipment. Yes?
So wouldn't you consider the stock exchange an investment because you're actually putting into a company, you're actually buying into a company to...
Not really. You're buying a piece of paper. So you're moving and transferring wealth on paper. Capital to us, as I said, it has to lead to the expansion in the productive capacity of society. It has to be building stuff.
So money, cash itself, is not involved in capital when it comes to economics?
Not in econ. Money to us is not a productive resource by itself.
Okay.
It acts as a unit of account, it helps to facilitate production and output. So I'm not saying it's not important, but we don't consider it to be one of the resources.
Is it just because you can print more money?
But we won't get into the printing of money argument. That's an econ 2 thing. How many of you have watched this movie, The Wolf of Wall Street? I won't show that here because I need to keep my job. But there's a particular scene in that movie that gets the, there are lots of scenes in that movie, but there's a particular scene in that movie. Very early in the movie, Matthew McConaughey is one of the characters. He's a very intense actor. I'm not a big fan. But there's a scene in that movie with him in the beginning where he's kind of talking to the Leonardo DiCaprio character. That's the scene where he was beating his chest and acting a little crazy. But he gave a little speech before that kind of highlights this. And basically what he was explaining to him is that what we do here, which is the buying and selling of stock, is not real. He said it's really just a transfer in terms of paper. And we're moving this particular paper from person to person, and wealth is being moved on paper. He argued that the only time it becomes real is when an individual decides to take whatever wealth it is on paper, make it into real money and start using it in the economy. And he's absolutely right. The stock market to us is not investment. It really is just a movement in terms of wealth on paper. Now it can become real if it is the case that you take it from that particular process, you start buying goods and services, but that particular process there is not investment to an economist. He kind of hit the nail on the head when he was trying to explain that, in between the curse words. So capital, very specific, be very careful. This is a very big deal in econ. There are four, you have your hand up? There are four resource categories: land, labor, capital, and here's the last one. The last one is entrepreneurial ability. Or sometimes you'll hear me call it enterprise. I remember when I did econ, there were only 3 resource categories: land, labor, and capital. Now they have another one. It's not modern, but it's fairly new. Wasn't around when I did undergrad. And it's the entrepreneur or enterprise. When I say an entrepreneur, what pops in your mind? When I say an entrepreneur, what pops in your mind?
A businessman?
You think of a businessman or a woman. Yeah? Did I see a hand back there? Yeah? What do you think
I
of?
was just going to say someone that has found a way to make a profit off delivering a good or service to the economy.
So delivering a good or service and you found a way to make a profit, that's an entrepreneur. Okay. Any other ideas about what an entrepreneur is? Yes?
Taking a risk.
What's that?
Taking a risk.
When an individual decides to undertake risk?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Combining the other three.
What's that?
Combining all the land, labor, and capital.
Have you done econ before?
No, I just started.
Again, the entrepreneur is very specific in econ. Oftentimes we think of the entrepreneur as somebody who opens their own business, the businessman or woman. In econ, the entrepreneur is this. The entrepreneur is the human element. So it is a human being. So it's a human element that organizes land, labor, and capital. And here's the last piece that's really important. So it's the human element that organizes land, labor, and capital to come up with new ideas. That's the key thing with the entrepreneur. Organize the land, labor, and capital to come up with new ideas. The key thing with the entrepreneur, very important, is that the entrepreneur is an innovator. So it goes a little bit above and beyond just owning your own business. It goes a little bit above and beyond just delivering goods and services to the market. You have to act as an innovator. So when I think of entrepreneurs, I think of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, organizing land, labor, and capital to innovate. They're also considered risk takers. Somebody told me this earlier. But the key thing with the entrepreneur is they act as innovators. Come up with new ideas. 4 resource categories. Resources are scarce. We can categorize them under land, gifts of nature, all the natural resources. Labor, the physical and mental talents used in the production process. Capital, which is all the tools, machine, buildings, equipment, property, all of that stuff, which is considered real investment in econ. And the last one is the entrepreneur, that human element that organizes